Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the GSD Show. I am your host, Mike Arce, and on today's episode, I sit down with six-time Ironman competitor. That's right, six-time Ironman competitor, also a best-selling author, a coach, an entrepreneur, and the king of subscriptions, Dan Martell. Dan and I talk about his personal fitness journey on becoming a six-time Ironman, his new book, Buy Back Your Time, why he spends over $300,000 a year on his health, his many playbooks that set him, his family, and his team up for success, as well as some tips to help you elevate your life and leadership. So, without further ado, let's get into the episode. All right, Dan, so welcome to the GSD Show. Not been here before. And actually, today's really the first day we've met. We've kind of like connected outside of in person, but this is the first time I've seen you in person.
Dude, it's an honor, man. I'm excited to be here, and I'll call the shot, man. I know you've had some incredible guests, but let's make this the best conversation you've had so far on the podcast.
I'm excited. You've got a book that's been highly recommended to me by a couple people. One of them, our clients, was reading it. Another one, a good friend. I also look at him as a mentor. Chris Ronzio told me about the book. So we're going to be diving into it. Before we do, one of the things you said as part of your brand is that people always say, man, you're taller than I thought.
Yeah, I get to.
But in this video, you refuse to lower your chair.
Wow, I sat in
because you were like, I'm going to look taller than Mike, visibly, to the audience.
And you were trying to convince me that it would be off-brand for me to do this, because then people would be like, "Oh, you're as tall as I thought you were."
Right.
So,
and convincing you of something is on brand for me.
There we go.
As much as possible. So, all right. Well, here are some of the things that I've heard about you. And things that I've learned about your strengths. And what everyone's saying is like, this is Dan's thing. Number one is subscriptions. You're really good at building up monthly recurring revenue. Is this true?
Yeah, that's like what I've been doing since I was 17.
Great. So we're going to dive into like all the different ways to look at monthly recurring revenue and how can we really get it up there. Also, playbooks. You have a playbook for what? Everything?
Literally packing my stuff, video. Like there's no area of a thing that's happens more than once that I don't have a playbook for.
I love it. You've also found a way to quantify time and how to really buy back your time.
Yeah, it's a mathematical equation.
Awesome. And you're doing an Ironman here in Arizona, because you're not an Arizona guy.
No, I'm Canadian. Ironman something started 4 years ago. Couldn't even swim. And it's been a fun way to
What do you mean you couldn't swim?
I could not swim.
You didn't know how to swim?
Did not know how to swim.
How old were you?
I'm 43 now, so this would have been 39.
I always wonder how that happens.
Okay, so
hopefully
when I say
it's not a sensitive story.
No, when I was little. No, and to be clear, could I get around in the water?
So you can survive.
I could jump off a cliff and swim back to the edge, but there's no way I was swimming any distance.
So mechanically, you didn't know how to breathe properly and
zero. Didn't even know how any of that came together.
Got it. Okay. And so now, is this your first Ironman?
No, this would be probably my sixth.
Sixth Ironman?
Yeah.
Wow. And you said 4 years ago you'd awesome. So this all happened in the last 4 years.
Yeah. It started quickly with some sprint triathlons, and then it's escalated quickly to halves and then bowls, and then halves and bowls.
That's awesome. And we were talking also, you were just in Canada where the fires were like a block away from your house.
Literally, yeah.
And you, Cameron Harold and Nick Kuzmich, who both were on the podcast already.
Yeah.
You guys all were at dinner the night that those things all started.
Literally, the fire crested the top of the mountain. We're having dinner. We came out to the whole side of this mountain on fire.
And what was the plan? How did you turn lemon? You said you turned lemon.
I turned lemon into lemon cake and lemon sorbet.
What'd you guys do?
I mean, my philosophy, Mike, is control the controllables. So I just immediately went home, got my wife and kids on board. They were a little upset. They thought I was overreacting. Turns out 2 hours later, when the fire jumped the lake, it literally jumped a mile and dropped near our home, that I had made the right decision. So we just left. We just created some space. I mean, I just watched Maui burn down, and like a lot of people got stuck and ended up jumping in the ocean. So and then we decided as a friend group, there's a bunch of us that like Kuzmich and my other friend, Matt Bertulli, to just go to Whistler, go to magical mountain Disneyland and see if we could enjoy ourselves. And it felt weird as adults because we knew what was going on back home.
Yeah.
But we wanted to protect our kids from having to worry, you know what I mean, about like that kind of trauma. So
I love it.
Well,
Before we dive into some of the stuff we talked about, which I'm assuming is probably in here, let's talk about Buy Back Your Time. What's this book about? What made you say, I've got to write this thing?
Yeah. Well, I joke with people, I wrote the book to buy back my time.
Right.
Even though 2.5 years of writing it doesn't sound like efficient use of my time, I wrote it because people I care a lot about, my clients, my family, brothers and sisters that are all entrepreneurs, they watched the way I live, and there was a disconnect between how I showed up versus how they executed. So that was the original reason to write it. Obviously, I was writing it for them, but more importantly, like I'm just on a mission to create a movement to teach entrepreneurs how to build businesses they don't grow to hate.
Okay.
Because I think most people, as they're growing, they hit what I call the pain line. I talk about it in the book. And when you hit the pain line, what I've discovered about entrepreneurship is entrepreneurs will not grow into pain. If I hold a knife to your throat and say, step forward, Mike, you'd be like, well, no. Same thing with your business. If you have an opportunity to triple the size of your business within the next 4 weeks, you're not going to take it, right? You'll sit on it. You'll drag your feet. You'll sabotage. I've seen entrepreneurs throw hand grenades in their business to essentially create ground cover to plead like, oh, it didn't work out or da-da-da-da. Right. It's like, let's talk about this. So I want to show people, essentially, that's why the subtitle of my book is Get Unstuck, Reclaim Your Freedom, and Build Your Empire. Empire, I know it's a scary word for some people, but here's my definition.
A life of unlimited creation you never have to retire from.
So your empire doesn't require bazillions of dollars. It can literally be a solopreneur showing up intentionally about how they add value to their customers and charge for their time and reinvest the free time they get into becoming more and being more for their family and being more for themselves.
So when you say buy back your time, break that down for me. Like, how do you look at it? Because I've heard people have their own perspectives about it, but what's your perspective on buying back time?
Yeah, I mean, I think every person has to understand what they're worth, their value, like their actual economic production per hour. And I have this framework in the book called the buyback rate, which is a simple math equation, but as soon as I talk about math, sometimes people's their eyes glaze over. Yeah. But the idea is like, take what you make, your income, right? And then divide it by 2,000, which is the amount of hours most people work in a year. And then divide that number by 4. And the reason it's 4 is because I want you to get a 4 times ROI every time you deploy money to hire somebody, because most people, they hire above. They're here and they go, I need a podcast editor. Right. It's like, you don't even have an assistant. I need a COO. You don't even have an assistant. You know what I mean? Right. Like there's levels to this. And I talk about it in the replacement ladder chapter. But once you understand what your buyback rate is, then my argument is if anything in your calendar that you're doing, you could pay somebody else to do for that price or less, you're essentially working against yourself. You're working against your goals. You're swimming up river, and it just makes life harder. And that's the area I want to help people overcome.
There's 4 quadrants to this, and I just went through this with somebody about 2 weeks ago. Funny enough. We talk about there's stuff that you love doing, but anybody can do it. There's stuff that you love doing, but you're the only one that can do it. There's stuff that you don't love doing.
For that stuff to somebody else, and then you replace it. It's the audit, transfer, fill. So then you fill it with things that light you up, that make you money.
Right.
The drip matrix, which is the quadrant concept, is how do I go from delegate and get out of my life to replace it. So you work your way up, then invest so I have more to become, so that I can produce, right? And produce for me is, some people call it your unique ability, your zone of genius. It's the thing that you would do almost for free.
Right.
The world really values.
Right.
Like, it's like, I wish nothing for people more than for them to go on a journey to discover what they love to do that the world rewards. Because the moment you do that, Mike, I feel like you've gotten to that place.
Yeah.
It's like a drug.
It is.
You'll wonder, like, does nobody else get this? Like, is this real? Will this last? And it turns out not only will it last, you'll amplify it if you give yourself permission to remove anything out of your calendar that doesn't look like that. So I am, if anything, ruthless about honoring that concept in my life and saying no to a ton of stuff that some people would say yes to, because it's not that bad. But anytime you say yes to something, you're inadvertently saying no to something. If you say yes to an opportunity, a phone call, a meeting, you're saying no to your dreams and goals. If you say no to something, you're creating the space for a yes to support your dreams and goals.
Right.
So my whole thing is, how do you get to a place where, following the drip matrix, where you're producing from a place of energy, like positive energy? It doesn't matter if you're an extrovert, introvert, whatever. Like, how you make money is independent. It's just, you need to honor, this is what I love to do. Let's figure out a way to do that as much as possible.
Yeah. Have you, obviously, like, it's such a part of you now, but are there still moments where you catch yourself and you're like, wait a minute, why am I doing this?
All the time.
Really? Like,
yeah. And what I love is I've gotten to a place where I run multiple companies. We have a $100 million holdco where we buy software companies. So like, my life looks completely different than when I was 17 trying to build software and finding anybody to buy it. And because I have a team of people that have been introduced to this concept, I've been teaching this for 15 years, like, they'll come to me with it. So like the other day, my head of program, one of my high-end programs, Nessa, she came to me and she's like, hey, I need to take this out of your world. The final, so high-end program, major investment, software CEOs. And I always did last interviews. It's my group. I want to do last interviews. And she says to me, she goes, hey, our director of sales is not happy because when it ends up on your plate, it waits. And the way he gets compensated in his team is based on when they get built, like when they get approved, and you're a bottleneck. And for the last 6 months that we've sent people to you, you've never said no. And I always do an interview with them. So I'm telling you, going forward, you're no longer doing final interviews.
That's a great person there.
And I had to sit there in my angst going, I don't like this at all. I remember thinking to myself, you're not being nice, but you're so right.
Right.
And you're right. Do I have a great person in that role? Yes. And I think a third of the book, people are like, oh, it's like one of the best productivity books. And it is. But it's actually a leadership book too. And here's why. I think that most CEOs, most entrepreneurs are actually kind of crazy. So
I would agree with that.
Yeah. So think about this, buying back your time. The premise is, essentially I show people financially, how do you spend money to buy back time in the most efficient way? And I teach here's where you should look, and personal and professional, all that stuff. But it also means you bring people into your life.
Right.
So if you're a crazy leader, the problem that you will quickly discover is great people are not going to stick around you. So I've been fortunate to coach people on this topic for almost a decade. And so I teach these frameworks like the 1-3-1 rule, transformational leadership, the 50 to fix it concepts, because, if people don't feel like they're seen, appreciated, and heard and empowered, right? Like, that's what Nessa was empowered to say, hey, there's a problem. Here's the reason why, and I'm going to ask you to stop. She would have never done that. Right. Now, as a entrepreneur, we also have to receive that and allow ourselves to let go. The biggest thing that's going to stop somebody from actually getting massive value from executing this book is their fear of letting go at every level. It works for people that are independent folks right now, one person armies, all the way to 9-figure CEOs.
Well, if you read the book Rocket Fuel, they broke down visionary versus integrator, and visionary, that's one of their characteristics, is that difficulty with detaching and letting go.
I mean, they call it the bottleneck because it's at the top.
Right.
So John Maxwell talks about the law of the lid, a business will never grow past the growth of the leader. And one of the things that a leader needs to understand is how to let go, how to delegate, how to, inspect what you expect. I'm not saying delegate it and, set it and forget it. I'm saying learn to work through people. That's the reason most people, again, I work with a bunch of different folks, but folks that get stuck at about 2 million in revenue is because the skill that they're missing at that level, and there's different things missing at each level of revenue growth, at 2 million, it's the skill of working through somebody to accomplish stuff, right, Mike? Because at that level, all of a sudden you have a manager responsible for a team that talks to the customer. Right. Sales, customer success, marketing. Somebody else manages a team of people that talk to the market. And all of a sudden, for a lot of entrepreneurs that are operating out of fear of somebody messing up, fear of somebody
saying something off brand.
Yeah, making a commitment that we don't do, or misrepresenting their values or whatever, that's real scary. And I get it. It's real. But in that space, when you think what if somebody did that? what comes up, and you feel, it's in their heart. Like I see it in somebody's eye when they're like, this person told a client that we guaranteed something and we don't do that. And they're like, I can't believe they said that. And you can see it's physical.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey man, just breathe into that. Let's talk about it. Because at the end of the day, it is a feeling. It is a fear that if you actually just ran through that scenario 1,000 times, like I always tell them, it's like the other day I was coaching a guy. He had a friend of his that owns a company tell him that a person that works for him applied for a job. That hurt. Yeah. Somebody that he had no clue, didn't expect, had applied to his friend's company, thought they were happy. And he asked me, like, what should I do? I said, let's talk about how you feel. Because I can see it in your eyes. Like, how does that feel? He shares. He's like, I feel betrayed. I feel scared. I feel worried. Like, if they're feeling that way, is there other people feeling like this? And I go, cool. I want you to feel that. Because it's real. Like, it's an emotional feeling. However, let's talk about going through and pretending in our minds that this is something that happened 1,000 times. Because the higher you go as an entrepreneur, the reason why people have wisdom and insight at the highest level is because they've seen that thing play out 100 times.
Yeah.
And once I said, like, pretend it goes through. Pretend every time you go to a party, somebody on your team is like, you're just going to get used to it, right? It won't have that emotional feeling. So from that place, what do you think you should do? And he's like, oh, well, I'm going to do this. And I said, perfect, do that. Because that is an unemotional response to the facts. Right? So I find it's interesting when we talk about buying back our time, a lot of it is, who do you need to become to attract a team that you give permission to allow you to actually get your time back?
What's the difference between who you are today and the person that's ultimately where you want to be? And how do we start filling that gap?
Yeah, that's why it's audit, transfer, fill. Fill for me isn't fill your time with more things that make you money, although it should be at first, right? When you're starting off, and if you're a logo designer, buy back your time to create more logos. And anything that doesn't look like logo design, you shouldn't do. But at a certain point, it's like, okay, what are the other areas of the business that are lacking because of my leadership and the lack of knowing how to do it, that you then fill with your calendar? So it's like, I don't like when people are like, oh, I want to live the 4-hour work week. Personally, if your job is to wake up to work the least amount to make the most money, I just think that's a bad place to live. My goal is to teach people that want to express themselves at the highest level. It's like, how do you become more so you have more to give for your team, for your family, for your community? So the fill in my world are things like your skill set. If you don't have enough leads, then go learn how to do marketing. If you don't know how to sell, just go buy some books, go some trainings, get involved with Mike. You know what I mean? Like get the knowledge. So it's skill. The other one is the beliefs, right? What world views do you hold that are actually holding you back? And this is a big one for people when they say, like, I'm having a trouble around this. I go, what do you believe about that makes it hard? For example, I was talking to an entrepreneur the other day, and she said to me, she's like, I have a goal to get to 5 million. Okay. She's at $1 million right now. I want to get to 5 million. And I said, well, paint me the picture when you get there. And she's like, I'm 5 million. I got a great team. I'm really loving my work, blah, blah, blah. I said, cool. What about who you become? Are you strong? Are you powerful? And you're in the best shape of your life? And she's like, well, I can't do both. Like right now, I've put on 35 pounds in the last year trying to be who I am today. I go, fascinating. I say, well, I believe health is wealth. And the more healthy you get, the more wealth you have. And her reply was, I don't think I believe that. Interesting. So are you telling me you have a belief that if you get to 5 million, you're going to be 100 pounds overweight? Well, I never put it that way. I know. But the belief you have is literally like me holding a knife to your throat saying, step forward. Because the more they grow, the more out of shape they'll be, because that's been the correlation they've made. Some people have, the more I grow, the less time I have for my family, right? The more I grow, the worse of a friend I'm going to be.
They're afraid to grow because of
they've given themselves a belief that ain't true. And because of that, they will always play smaller than they could, because if they lean into it, they have a belief that the more I grow, the less connected to my faith I'm going to be. The more I grow, and it's like, no, you can have both. Like I teach people, it's like, no, the more revenue you have, the more freedom you get.
Options.
Yeah, they go, well, what do you mean? I go, no, literally, if you follow the playbook I teach you, the more revenue growth you have, the more time in your calendar have. It'll freak you out. Most people with the first hire I teach them how to do will get 20 to 30 hours back in their week. Now what? Now it's you against you. Now it's you having to be responsible for yourself. Now it's you deciding like, I really should go to the gym because I don't have an excuse anymore.
Yeah.
And I really should, spend time on strategy because I don't even know what I'm doing right now. I don't have a clear vision. I really should spend more time on building a recruiting funnel so I can hire better quality people because the people on my team, let's be honest, they're not rock stars. But again, people love staying busy. I'm all about teaching people like, how do you invest in you to become more so you have more to give to your team, to yourself.
Right.
And getting over those beliefs. If you could do those two things, if you do the skills and the beliefs, then the center of that is character traits. Who do you become? The discipline, the motivation, the drive, the leadership skills, the communication skills. That's the whole, for me, the success ladder. It's skills, beliefs, and character traits. And that's how we become more.
Love that, man. Yeah, we definitely talk about that where busy does not equal productive.
Nope.
I get it, your counters. And there's actually a really cool conversation with Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I think they were on Larry King and they were just talking. And Bill Gates is talking about in front of Warren where he first wanted to get together with him. And Warren's like, oh yeah, whenever, just let me know. And he's like, well, I want to make sure it works for you. So he's like, I open up my calendar and I'm looking for a time slot. And I'm booked up end to end.
This is Bill Gates saying that.
Bill Gates.
Yeah. Warren does not take me as somebody who has that much.
He goes, I'm booked up end to end. And he goes, okay, well, what about this? He's like, sure. And then he looked at Warren's calendar and he goes, he had like one journal entry for like the next 2 weeks in his calendar. And he goes, at the time, I associated being busy with being successful. And what I realized was I needed that white space. That was very valuable to me so I could do my best work because I wasn't able to do that end to end with meetings, hearing everyone else's ideas except my own. And so it was a really interesting conversation, but it was a good one. It's on YouTube, but
yeah, I think I saw it. And what was interesting, I think his net worth was like 1/10 of Warren's net worth. So he's like, this guy's got something figured out.
Yeah. And his time. He had more money and time.
Yeah.
Right. And that was the thing. And he was older and wiser, but I'm sure Bill Gates is doing good now.
Yeah.
So one of the things we talked about earlier, I wanted to dive in with you is your ability to see monthly recurring revenue a certain way and really focus on how to build that up, and regardless of the business that they're in. So obviously a lot of the people that are on the call today or listening in, they're gym owners or fitness studio owners. But I think this applies to as many businesses as possible, getting that in. And that's how we structured our business. At the beginning, we had to kill to eat every time.
Yeah. And
we realized, man, we need to get some MRR in because if we don't get that in, it's going to be exhausting and so unpredictable.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at reoccurring revenue, subscription, MRR, monthly recurring revenue, what most people focus on is net new sales. And I get it. You start off, it's like, I got 0 customers. You should probably go get some. Okay. But if you've been in business for a year or 2 years and you've kind of filled up your gym or you filled up your ability to serve customers, when people come to me, because I work predominantly with software CEOs and coaches, like those are kind of a lot of coaching organizations have a subscription business to their. And now it's not sexy, chocolate, broccoli, chocolate, marketing, broccoli, retention. Like I get it, but it's what you think you want, but what you need, right? Is retention. And the reason why is because of lifetime value. So if you look at a thing called CLTV, customer lifetime value, it's based on what people pay per month and what's your monthly churn or how long do they stick around. If that number goes up because you reduce your cancellation, you reduce your churn, you have that much more profit. Think about profit. It hits the bottom line. Your costs are fixed.
Right.
So every time you keep a customer from canceling for another month, for another 6 months, it literally hits your profit.
Right.
So with that, you have more resources to reinvest in the business, AKA buy back your time so that you can more. So as soon as we work with a client, we always analyze what's called their growth ceiling. We look at what point in the future, I can call it to the month, Mike. Like most people don't know this. If you go through the growth ceiling calculation, you can Google it. There's probably some templates online. We have our own version. But you put in the amount of customers you have, how many customers you have every month, how many leave, what's the average they pay you, and it will tell you to the month to when you hit your growth ceiling.
Wow.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's mathematical. It is.
Well, if you think about it, yeah, because you're going to get to a point where you can outsell what you're losing.
That's the whole point. It's literally, there's a point where your cancellations per month, that number, that absolute number as a percentage, if it's 10%, 20% per month, becomes bigger than your ability to replenish.
Right.
So at that level, if you look at the sequencing of what should I do, 1, 2, 3, it's always retention first. Then it's usually lifetime value, like increasing your prices, increasing your upsells, increasing your ability to monetize. Then you go back with the retention, the monetization to marketing, and increase the top of funnel so you have more people to add into the machine.
Right.
So in the software world, I've worked with people, I've invested in over 100 SaaS companies. I'm involved with Train, you mentioned Chris, probably 8 billion in revenue. And this is literally the playbook we execute. It's just the same thing. And it works for gyms, online subscription, software. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a math and mindset guy.
Right.
It's numbers and beliefs.
I 100% agree with that. And when it comes to attrition or churn, what are some things that you want to look at? Because I think where a lot of people tend to want to fix immediately is how to convince someone to stay when they cancel. But it's way before that. So what are some of the things that you do to help a company identify ways to improve their attrition?
This is literally my love language.
Good. Me too.
Okay, good. You're literally, that question got me really excited because I'm a product guy, right? I care about the customer. When I got introduced to recurring revenue at 17 as a software programmer, it literally became the quietness about it became, so I grew up in a lot of chaos. It almost became, this predictability that I didn't, you know what I mean? Because it was predictable. It sounds funny, but I still remember, if I deliver every month,
you can count on it.
Yeah. And it was consistent. It's it was so honest. Every month, if I deliver the amount of value more than what they pay, they will stay. I love that exchange. I just think it's just a beautiful, honest way to do business. So what do I look for? First off, we instrument the cancellation request. I want to understand the people that are leaving, why are they leaving? Okay, so we have to capture that. So that's step one, cancellation, ask the questions on the phone, ask them in an email, ask them to fill out a form, whatever way you can capture that, I'm looking at that.
Okay.
That will usually tell me where in the promise that was made to the market, our service disconnected.
Right.
Because that's usually what happens. There's a disconnect between the promise and what they experience. Then what I do is I try to prioritize the first 30 days. So it's called time to first value, TTFV. Okay, time to first value in software, we literally try to measure it down to the first time user experience. It's called the FTUI.
Okay. FTUI.
Yeah, it's called FTUI. Yeah.
First time
user experience.
FTUI.
Yeah.
Okay.
FTUI.
I could see it. Sounds Italian, which I can appreciate.
Yeah, well, it's got a lot of energy because if you think about it, most people don't come back in software world. Right. If I say, hey man, check out this software, it's going to solve a problem, you sign up, you play with it. If you don't experience that problem being solved in that first experience, you're not going to give it a second chance.
No. Even if it's evolved over time, you've kind of had
you've got a mental model of what the software's like. I tried it, wasn't good. You hear people say this all the time.
There's no evolution ever.
No, it never could get better. Never. Crazy idea. Real time, they're updating software. But so I always look at that first time user experience and say, how do we get people to what's called core value? How do we get them to experience the value of our product? And then look at the journey. And the way to do that is you find your best customers. So most people don't understand this. Your best customers believe something about what you do. It doesn't matter if it's a gym, doesn't matter if it's software, doesn't matter if it's an online subscription box. The best customers that have been the highest retention believe something about what you do, and you need to front load that into the product or the experience.
And when you say front load that, you mean just make sure that first 90 days or?
Oh, the first time they use it. Okay. I'm talking about the onboard call.
Okay.
Right. Imagine the person that loves your coaching organization says, I love the fact that my team gets to get trained by you. And all your best customers say that language. Well, guess what I'm going to change in the onboarding call? Hey, one of the things that people love about our program is that your people get to be trained by us so that you build the people build the business. Well, that's cool. So what I need from you is your top 3 people that are involved in revenue, usually marketing, sales, and customer success, and we're going to onboard them. So all of a sudden, I took something that everybody that's stuck around loves that I've never made evident in my sales process or the onboarding, and I front load that into the experience, and now all of a sudden, everybody starts to experience, get to that core value. And you just that's product development. See, product development is a science that has been taught in universities for years. Most people just never study it. That's my background. I nerd out on this stuff. I care about pixels. I care about white space. I care about the feel of an experience, because I know that if I can get the buyer, the user in the right headspace, I get to keep them for life. And if I keep a customer for life, my lifetime value goes up, which means I have more revenue to reinvest in growth.
Well, not only more revenue to invest back into getting more business, but you would also have more to invest into keeping them. You know, if all of a sudden that lifetime value jumped from $15,000 to $45,000, you have an extra $30,000 to keep them for longer to get them to become $50,000.
Crazy idea. And that's why the best companies like an Apple have the best product, because they have the most budget for innovation.
Yeah.
So
they got a crazy loyalty.
Yeah. Their ability to monetize. Most people don't realize they just announced the Apple credit card. I mean, their ability to turn on profit centers at scale within their ecosystem is bar none the best. But how did they do that? They created the best product.
Yeah.
You know, you just can't outmarket a bad product.
Amazon's done the same thing, right? Like how many?
Jeff Bezos told the market publicly, never expect us to make a profit. If you expect us to make a profit, don't invest in our stock. What we will give is a commitment to growth and a commitment to reinvestment and a commitment to serve our customers at the highest level. Literally everything Amazon does is for the customer. They have a persona that in meetings, they'll be like, the executive teams are taught to ask, how does this help customer persona? And like, you need to know who that is. And if you don't have a strong answer, it means that it's not aligned with what Bezos is saying is important to us.
Right. They have a ton of streams of income coming in now.
Dude, the Amazon Web Service, you know, because I'm a tech guy, hosting, you know, where most of the internet startups, Uber, Airbnb, they all run on top of Amazon Web Services. If that business was spun out as a separate business, would be the largest software business in the world.
Really?
Yeah, most people don't know that. Bigger than Salesforce, bigger than Oracle, bigger than Microsoft. It would literally be the largest software company reoccurring business in the world. It's that meaningful. And it's a side hustle to Amazon.
Right. That's amazing, man. Okay, so we obviously know we got to focus on keeping our customers and we want to find, I love what you said about, we interview our top customers the first quarter of every year and we find out what they love, what they wish was a little bit better. But I never thought about front loading the stuff that they love, finding a way to get that into like that first experience.
Yeah, when you hear product marketing, that's what product marketing is. Yeah. So a lot of people are like, well, what's the difference between like marketing and product marketing? Marketing is to a customer that is new. Product marketing is to your existing customers. So what do you feed the product marketing team to market?
Right.
It's what do your best customers believe or know to be true that makes them stay? Well, figure out how do you increase that. So like one of my coaching clients that I showed them what we do, because we have some of the best numbers in the industry, is at the beginning of every one of your sessions, retell the customer what they bought and why it's awesome and what's coming next.
Right.
It's like if you tell them why it's awesome, what they bought and what's coming next, then if they miss the onboarding call, doesn't matter because you're going to tell them at the next session. And then, so it's almost like some people, they're like, well, I already sent them an email. Seriously? That's already checkbox, sent them an email. Right. I don't read my emails. Right. So it's like, well, we already told them last week on this call. No. Tell them at your events, have the coaches learn the talk tracks. Like, it's almost like you're building an internal ambassador group amongst every touch point with the customer to remind them of the value you've created and or make them aware of it so that if they want to lean in, then you can support them.
To constant promotion.
Yeah.
Internal promotion.
Yeah, because like salespeople, if they're good, they know like my job is to figure out what are the three things that my customers or the buyers have an issue with and only present them those three things. Because if I give them everything, I'm going to confuse them. And what I've learned a long time ago is a confused mind doesn't buy.
Yeah.
So you don't do that, which means that when they buy, they're happy with the three things you said you can do for them, but there's probably other things you do.
Yeah. I think the conversation around what's coming and the conversation about what happened already, when you think about how one of the most addictive things in people's lives right now is streaming series, right? Whether it's Breaking Bad or Yellowstone.
Another subscription business.
There's a subscription. But if you think about like how people are resold and sold on the next things. Let's say you and I are both into Yellowstone, right?
I love Yellowstone.
Yeah.
But I liked, what is it, 18? Did you see the old one?
I haven't seen either yet.
You've never watched Yellowstone?
No.
I'm jealous
on deck.
because you're going to enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
It's a great
on
series.
deck for me. It's on deck. But if you and I were watching Yellowstone, we're constantly selling each other on what happened and what's next, right? It's like, hey, did you see this? Yeah. What do you think of that? Was that crazy? What did you think was going to happen? And then, well, next week, did you see what's happened they showed like the preview? Oh, they said this is going to happen. You think that's going to happen? And so now there's this constant talk of what happened and what's going to happen. And the excitement just continues to build upon itself. And like you said, you're jealous because I'm about to experience the onboarding of this show.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that would work the same way with a member that's been with me, let's say, as a customer for 3 years, 4 years, and they find someone that joined, they're like, oh man, you're about to get started. You're going to love, watch what they do in the first month.
Let me give you a strategy to actually do this. So one of my rules is a concept called seeding. So you always need to seed what's next. The best way to seed is to tell a story of a customer who's in the next group. So all your case studies in your training on stage at your event should come from customers in the next group.
Yeah.
Because it creates a ladder. And what do people do when they get a ladder in front of them? They climb it.
Right. The ascension model.
Most people leave groups because they have nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
And they don't even know there's another place because nobody told them.
Right.
So like strategically, product marketing, how would you do that? You would literally have the customers do the open session. So like if you had 3 different level groups, the beginner, the middle, and the more advanced, the people in the middle would maybe teach 10-minute tactics in the beginners. And then those people go like, I want to be like that guy. And the same thing for the middle. The high-end guys are teaching the middle one, or at least you're recording their case studies or testimonials, and you only ever tell case studies, testimonials. And it's just like, and then those people, where do you go? Private coaching. So you only, in this group, ever tell stories about your private coaching clients.
Right.
And that's just an example in the software world that I come from, where you might have experienced this. You log into a product and there's a menu item. And when you click it, it says this, you have to be in this membership to get it unlocked. Same concept in software, just applied to a coaching business.
See, you know what that means, McKenna? A-class plus. So we've got
Shopify Plus. I'm assuming that's what it is. Yeah.
So we've got 3 different levels to our mastermind. We've got 360, 360 plus, and A-class. And we actually are realizing now, A-class people doing $1 million or more.
Yeah.
But what we've realized is there's people that are doing $1 million
3
or more.
million guys that need.
Yeah. And the people that have many locations.
Yeah.
Because some people are doing it with 1 or 2. The problems are different than the people that have 5 or 6, but also they want to be the people that have 5 or 6. So we started breaking them up in regards to like, hey, you're going to have this group and they're going to have this group, but we haven't labeled that second group. I think we're going to need
A-class plus.
A-class plus, McKenna.
Love it.
McKenna's my director of marketing. So this is her thing now.
So good.
Awesome. So earlier you mentioned that you have playbooks for everything, and I watched it happen because you were telling a story about you were on a podcast similar to this, and in the middle of the podcast, you went to move the book, not coffee, all over your lap.
Literally.
Hot coffee.
Yeah, right in my crotch.
And you had not only to finish that episode, but you had to go to another one, and that was your outfit.
Yeah.
And so you looked over at your team and you said, hey, we need to add this to the playbook. Let's get a second outfit ready to go at all times.
It's just part of the protocol now.
But you said add it to the playbook.
Yeah.
Not, hey, let's create a system for this or whatever, add it to the playbook. So, and then Chris Ronzio, we were at the airport the other day and I was telling him how he's the one that connected us.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to be interviewing him here coming up. And he goes, ask him about playbooks. He's got a playbook for everything.
Yeah. So I do have a playbook for everything, but I think what would be helpful for most people is to understand how I create them. Because I think that's what's very unique and different. So a lot of people might read a book like The E-Myth or some other training, they wrote a great book called Playbook. And they go, okay, I got to do an offsite with my team and we got to document it all. We're going to get in a big house or a hotel conference room and we're just going to type away until we got what's sometimes called like the operating manual of our business. The challenge with that for me is that typically as soon as that meeting's done, you can start a clock to how long before this thing becomes not relevant. It decays, right? So my philosophy, first and foremost, is whoever follows the playbook owns the playbook. Okay, so the person who follows the checklist, they own keeping it up to date.
Right.
So step number 1, if you're doing something that has a checklist, you must have it open while you do it. And as a leader, we hold people accountable to that.
Even if you know how to do like the back of your hand.
Never.
Like a pilot checks his stuff off.
Always. Dude, it's just slower if you don't do this.
Right.
It's inefficient and you will guarantee introduce issues. And for certain core things that we need to happen every time, we don't have a culture where you just don't follow it, because not doing it means a customer has a bad experience, right? How I create the playbooks is this philosophy I teach in the book called the camcorder method. And this is what a lot of people find fascinating about me, is I pretty much record my screen for most of my day doing things. Okay. And the reason why is because I'm collecting the activities that I eventually will buy back. So when I was starting off, okay, and I remember I called up one of my mentors and I said, because I was spending 4 hours at the office every Sunday processing my mail. Okay. I thought this was normal. I had a couple million a year business, and every Sunday I would go to the PO box, I'd grab all the mail, and I'd go to my office and I would sort through it. And it took me 4 hours because it was like contracts I had to sign, scan,
combined
send.
with stuff you don't even know if it's for you anymore.
Oh, 100%. It's just a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm the chief mail sorter.
Right. Statements that you don't read because you got the online thing.
It's literally just a bunch of crap. It's marketing stuff. It's direct mail.
Right.
And I remember calling my mentor up and I said, hey man, I can't be the only CEO that does their own mail. So I called him. I said, his name was Eve. I said, what do you do? And he goes, oh, I don't know. My assistant takes care of it. I don't have an assistant.
Yeah.
How does that work? And I remember I eventually hired a woman. Her name is Lisa. And I had her at first just follow me and watch me what I did. So she came in, not on a Sunday because she didn't want to work on Sunday, but on a Friday. And we sat there and I walked her through what I did. And then the next week I give her the pile and I say, you try first shot. You know what I mean?
Right.
And eventually, like Lisa got it. And she would run the air. She would literally drop the contracts off to the lawyer, go to the bank, put the checks in the thing. And I, over time, within like 3 or 4 weeks, never had to touch physical mail. Lisa to this day still works for me.
Wow.
She's an incredible human. We're talking like 16 years later.
Wow.
Yeah. It's fun. And she loves to do it. Part-time, pay her well. And I get an email for every one of my companies I'm involved in with literally, it's like the subject line of the company with all the things that need to be done. And just this beautiful, simple, elegant system. And I share that because what I do today in this world that I didn't do then because I did it in person with her is I just record myself doing the work. So in the early days, for example, I used to post all my own social media content. A lot of people still do. Very wealthy, successful people post. I don't. I said, oh no, I'm going to record myself doing it. I'm going to talk out loud what the thing is that I'm doing. Here's how I write the copy. Here's how I write the caption. Here's how I set the tags. Here's how I do this. And then I send the email. I write this, all this stuff. And then I took those recordings. I hired somebody part-time to do that. And I gave it to them. And I said, you watch the videos and then you create the SOPs. You create the playbook. And then what happens is that person giving me back the SOP that they created from my videos, that process tells me if they got it.
And it also allows you to see if there's any kinks because you're looking at it from the way they built it and the way they saw it.
Totally.
Because sometimes the way you said it wasn't received in the way you meant to deliver.
And sometimes the software changes and the way I talk about it is not even the way they experience it.
Yeah.
So that creates this beautiful scenario where there's a video of me talking, doing the work, which is a bunch of stuff you're going to capture visually that you can't capture in words. And then there's the SOP that they created. That's the checklist, the process. And then for whatever reason, that person, if they decide to move on or we give them a new job or whatever, then I can grab both of those things and give it to the new person. And that is how I hire people and go from zero to hero. Okay. You met my assistant, Anne. I did not train her how to manage 100% of my inbox or 100% of my calendar. She trained herself. How? Watching the recordings of the previous assistant, recording her screen. And how did she create that process? From back when I first did it. And I said, I'm no longer going to do email. Let's create a system around it, which is chapter 6 in my book, right?
So how many playbooks do you have now?
Oh, don't know, don't care. Because I don't manage playbooks anymore.
It's just to make sure that they have them so they can.
There's always a playbook. It's part of our culture. We train on this. My COO of different companies would manage it. My assistant manages my personal life. My house manager manages the playbook of our house stuff. And literally, I just asked to see it. It's like today I was talking to my videographer and there was some stuff I wanted to tweak. And I said, do we have a playbook on shooting with Dan? He's like, of course you do. I said, just text it to me. So I just opened it up and I added a few notes around like how to capture the right angle when we're shooting podcasts, right? Not that he wasn't doing it. It's just like, I'm just going to write it in there. That way, any videographer that happens to travel with me that's trained has to look at the checklist and goes, oh, I'm shooting this. Does it have this, and this? And that way I can never have to communicate that again. Because I don't know about you, Mike, but what bugs me about entrepreneurship is when I feel like I'm repeating myself.
Yeah.
It's like the thing where I'm like, I've already said this 14 times. The challenge is most people have process problems, not people problems, and they blame the people. Think about that. You don't have a people problem. You have a process problem.
There's something I heard that was interesting. It says, good people don't break good processes. Bad processes break good people.
Yep. At the end of the day, you have to empower the person who's doing, hold them accountable to an outcome, right? Talk about that transformational leadership versus transactional. And that outcome they own, which means they own the playbook. So as long as you get the result, you can tweak the playbook. And if you hire somebody to replace yourself, give them that and they should train themselves.
Right.
Think about this concept, right? I had a client once who was pissed off at their team, right? He's like, I don't know if I should fire half of them. And I was like, why are you upset? Starts telling me, they don't follow this, they don't contribute to meetings, they don't think strategically, all this stuff. And I said, okay, make a list of all the stuff that your team does that frustrates you. Be very granular. He's like, okay. So you done? I gave him 3 minutes. He wrote them all down. So look at the list. He goes, yep. I go, show me on that list what stuff you've trained your team on. None of it. So you're telling me that you have expectations about how they should show up and do the work that you never communicated to them, and you're pissed off at your team. You didn't teach them how to be more productive. You didn't teach them how to respond to your Slack message. You didn't teach them how they should show up strategically in meetings. You didn't teach them how to think strategically. You didn't teach them anything, and you think you should fire them. How about you go look in a mirror?
Right.
How about you go get honest about your leadership? Leaders develop people. It is a privilege and an honor. My biggest aspiration in life is to build companies to develop people. I love my customers and I appreciate them, but I didn't build the company for them. I actually built it as a vehicle to develop talent. And I always tell team members, I said, I will ruin you for the rest of your career. Even if you go work somewhere else or you work or not. No, working somewhere else, I'm definitely going to ruin you. But even if you go do your own thing, because then you'll realize, holy shit, this is a lot of work.
There's a lot on the back end.
Oh, there's so much. The person you need to become to do that, to want to do that, to enjoy doing that. It's not natural sometimes, but it's what required. If you have big ambitions, it's required. To the degree you can develop your people, the people will build the business.
Right.
To me, people don't understand that. It's literally build the systems, the SOP, the training, build the people, step back, let the people build the business. It's a way easier transaction. It's kind of this concept. I always tell people there's 2 funnels in your business. There's a customer funnel and the team funnel, right? Think about the customer funnel: awareness, consideration, purchase, right? Onboarding, engagement, retention. That exact same funnel maps to your team.
Right.
Right? So people always they meet my team and they go man, how did you find that person? They're amazing. I go, I know. But I'll tell you, I don't have a magic place that I go fishing to find people like that. Right. I'm a good picker. How am I a good picker? Because I have a great top of funnel. I have a great brand. I have a lot of people that apply for one job. Some of our positions, 1,500 people apply for the position. So we're really great pickers, but we're not just great pickers. We're great developers. Yeah. So we call it talent acquisition, talent development, talent retention. And that is for a lot of CEOs, if they're, 7 figures plus, they should be spending half their time in that bucket.
I agree with that. Yeah. It's definitely an expensive thing to continuously churn, and the higher up that you're churning, the worse it is. Yeah. Last thing I want to dive into here, and just to touch on it, you got a playbook for business, obviously. I'm assuming you got playbooks for personal. One of them, I'm curious, you spend $300,000 a year on your health. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, I look at health as like a 360 health. I look at my mental health, I look at my physical health, I look at my relationship health, right? So when I say that, I have 5 coaches today in all different aspects of my life that I care about. So for example, we even have we have a parent coach, we have a family coach, and they're different, okay? Sean, our parent coach, is a 30 years of working with teenagers and understand kids at a level that most parents would never have the time to understand. So he helps us understand the conversation with our kid. Our family coach, Brooke, she literally comes into our home, lives with us, watches the interactions. Some people are like, this is crazy. You literally live like this. Yes, I do. Why? Because I don't want an okay marriage. I want an epic marriage. I want a world-class marriage. I want a marriage that is so deep with admiration and affection for my wife and vice versa, that if I need to pay somebody else to come into our home to watch how I interact, watch how I behave, and give them permission, because I believe that if we don't pay attention. So because I'm paying for that, I'm going to pay attention to the feedback where she goes, hey, you may not realize this, but when you did this, this, and this, I bet your wife felt like that. Oh, I don't want my wife to feel like that. Here's what I would encourage you to consider. Next time, do this. Easy. So like, why do we do that in business, but we don't do it in our personal lives?
Well, because it's not normal.
Well, I think most people don't invest in their business because they don't think it's normal.
Right. But as things become more normal, I remember when I first heard of a business coach, I'd never heard of a business coach before that, right? And so I think he charged me like $250 a month, right? A month for a once a week meetup, which is insane, right?
Yeah.
And I was
insane cheap, just so people hear.
Insane cheap.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was like,
this is crazy.
It's going to cost $250. That's almost a car payment. You sure you want to do this, right? Like that's because back then it wasn't normal. I didn't know anybody that had done anything like that. Never heard of that. And then once I got the coach and, saw things a new way, then all of a sudden I got exposed to somebody that charged $1,500 a month. And next thing you know, it's like $25K a day to hang out with this guy for 6 hours and his people to work with you, and it becomes more normal because you're exposed to it. It's the same reason I think why somebody won't spend, $300 on a course to learn something, but they'll spend $800 on a flat screen TV. Why? Because their friends all have the flat screen TVs in 4 or 5 different rooms. And so it's normal. The gym membership, we see it, right? If their friends are hanging out and getting a $19 gym membership, but they've got the flat screen TVs, you'll hear people, you spend how much? $200 on a gym membership? $200? That's crazy. I spent $20. But once you're in that circle and everyone else is paying $200, you're also buying the training and you're buying all the other stuff. I think personally, there's not a lot of people, unless you start getting in those circles, where you have people come into your house. Like you said, people thought it was crazy, right? We will come into the house and they go, yeah, she comes in and she watches us. But as you meet 2 or 3 people, you're like, okay.
Well, and 2 or 3 people at the highest level. The reason I invest that amount of capital in my personal life, health, and mindset is because at the end of the day, if we talk about buying back our time, go through a divorce.
Yeah.
You want to talk about time and money? Go through a breakup. Go through your kids not wanting to talk to you. Go through the mental space, your head space that you live in when those things are going on. And I've always correlated to, if you show me where you spend your money or where you dedicate your time, that is your priority.
Right.
So I can't sit here, Mike, and tell you that my wife is my number one priority, and you look at my bank account and you can't see shit on there that shows you that I'm investing in that relationship.
Right, that makes sense.
And you look at my calendar and there's F all in my calendar that shows you I'm investing in my relationship. There is no correlation to what you say is your priority and those two things being true. So I invest on the mindset, the health, the coaching of how I interact. And then I also invest in me personally, my physicality, my energy levels. Like I know that if I made a commitment to myself when I had kids that I never want to say to my kids, I'm too tired. I remember growing up, my dad had 4 kids, 2 brothers and my older sister. I get it. He worked really hard. But at the end of the day, when we finally got to see him and we said, hey, let's go do something, he's laying on the couch.
Yeah, it's like, let's play a game. Let's climb on daddy.
Yeah.
Daddy's the mountain.
Yeah. Or I see these dads on TikTok that are like, let's play a game of you paint a picture of me sleeping.
Yeah.
I love those. But I just made a commitment to myself that I never want to say no to my kid. So I remember I'm doing 75 hard. If anybody's familiar with the program, Matt, like 2 workouts a day. One has to be outside. All this stuff. I had a massive day, at the office, and I come home. I'd already done my 2 workouts, and my son Noah says, I was like, what do you want to do tonight? He goes, I want to bike downtown and go for pizza, just me and you. And I'm like, I can't even eat the pizza. So, and where we live on top of a mountain. If I go down to the city, I got to pull him up. And I'm like, oh, and literally my wife looks at me and she says to Noah, hey, I think your dad had a big day. Maybe do that another night. And I said, no, I'm going to do it. Why did I do it? Because for me, when I don't want to do stuff, but I made a commitment to do it and I keep it, I'm essentially building my self-confidence. I'm building the person that I said I would become. And to me, it's not in the moments when it's easy, it's when it's hard. So the reason I invest in myself is so that I can become more.
So I have more to give my family.
Yeah. It's very that simple. It's like, if I was already the person that my wife needed, then she would have zero feedback for me. So unfortunately, or fortunately, she has some feedback for Dan. Dan isn't a perfect husband, but I'm on the path to be. I have a desire. It's like they always joke, is it because you read a book on parenting that makes you a good parent, or is it because you're the kind of person that would read a book on parenting? See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So my intentionality is very clear. My family is important to me. My work is very important to me. And if you look at where I invest my time and money in my calendar, those things are present.
Yeah. You get good at whatever you practice, right? So if you tell your kid tomorrow, you get really good at saying tomorrow. Next thing you know, you're the tomorrow guy.
I love that. That's a great idea. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, I appreciate, getting to know you. Obviously I've studied your page and I got to watch some of your videos before coming on board. And so I was already appreciating you, but there's something about this that's really good. And I probably want some of your contacts for what you're doing on the health side, the mental health and the personal, the family and all that. Because that's really interesting. I'm part of a group called Genius Network.
Yeah, I'm going to Joe's right after this.
Really?
Yeah, I'm speaking at 100K group.
Yeah, I know Joe. Yeah, so, and there's a lot of contacts I got for some of that stuff through there, but I'm always interested in like what other people are doing.
It'd be my pleasure, Mike.
Yeah, it'd be great. Hey, man, well, for everybody watching, listening, get the book, buy back your time, follow Dan Martell. Awesome guy, awesome concepts that he talks about, and I'm so happy that you came to spend time with us today.
I appreciate it,
Thanks
Mike.
so much, brother.
Thanks.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Peace.
Cool.
It's a wrap.